It all starts with finding the right people. And, a mistake that we see a lot of founders make when they start making their first hires on the go-to-market team is they think that working at big logos or established organizations like Salesforce is going to automatically translate to success.
Hey, Matt. Firstly, thanks for coming on the show. I've been a huge fan of yours for some time.
Thank you for having me. Y'all have really low standards, right? If you're gonna have me on for a conversation, but I'm really looking forward to this.
Any
No,
guest who's got Australia in the back of their wall is always welcome on
Yeah,
this show.
I did this for you. I mean, Australia used to be missing from the wall, but I made sure to paste it on just for this chat.
it's cut out New Zealand.
Yeah, that's right. It's just Australia.
That's
Yeah.
just Australia.
No, it is. No, I mean, if I tilted the camera, you will be able to see New Zealand down there off to the right. So I
It's
got
good. It's good like that. I like it.
yeah, I got all the bases covered.
So I want to take you back to your early days. Really curious. How did you first get into sales?
Yeah, I think like most people accidentally, I studied criminal justice in school, always with the intention of when I graduated to go into the FBI, interestingly enough. And like many people, I presume, or at least I hope, the day that I graduated, I woke up and I'm like, I don't really want to do that anymore. So I'd spent, the past 4 years studying for this career that I planned on that I was thinking about since high school. I'm like, okay, well, what do I do? Something clicked in me where, throughout my childhood, whether it's working, bussing tables at restaurants or valeting cars, I've never had a job that wasn't in some way, shape, or form. My compensation was tied to commission, right? Or some level of incentives. And because let's be honest, sales jobs are easy to get into for the most part. So I fell into a sales role. My trial by fire, so to speak, was working for no salary, commission only, desk, a phone book, 300 dials a day, 5 days a week, and an extra 300 dials on Saturday, just for good measure. So that's kind of how I came up in this world.
Oh, wonderful. And then what, you worked your way into tech, and was that a deliberate step or you just again fell into it?
Yeah, it like everything else, very accidental. So I started working in financial services, and an individual contributor for a number of years, moved into leadership, got a role out here in Chicago with Fortune 500 organization managing money for rich people. And in the process of doing my day to day, I was doing a lot of client entertainment, which I was terrible at because I'm not an event planner, right? I'm not good at, planning parties and happy hours and things like that. I got introduced to the CEO of a startup that was based here in Chicago that was a corporate events marketplace. Became one of their first clients, ended up being one of their best clients. I found out after the fact during their first year of existence. After they raised their A, the CEO approached me and said, "Hey, you know the product, you obviously know what we do, you get it, so to speak. Do you want to come on board and help us build out sales teams across the country here?" So again, accidentally, I just happened to find myself working for a technology company back in 2014.
Wow. Awesome journey, man. And then, yeah, I've always been curious. I didn't get to ask you when I met you, but how did this whole inception of Sales Assembly came about with you and Jeff?
So when I joined this tech company that I mentioned a moment ago, Jeff was actually the first person that I hired there. We had met each other serving on the board of the same charity, I think about 2 or 3 years prior. And after he came on board, we're working together, building sales teams across the country. One of the things that we started doing at the time, just to not only build a community of like-minded individuals, but also help share ideas and best practices, for our own benefit, is we put together a really informal bi-monthly coffee meeting of the heads of sales of what at the time were really early stage Chicago tech companies like G2, Sprout Social, Active Campaign, Spot Hero. And we would come together every other month and just chat with each other as far as what we're working on, what we're struggling with. And it didn't take us long to realize that regardless of the product that their company sold or who they sold it to, they were always complaining about the exact same stuff. Right. So about a year and a half after that, Jeff and we were both impacted by layoff at the tech company that we're working at. So we actually use that as a springboard to say like, hey, what if we kind of started a business that offered solutions all these things you all kept complaining about, month after month, that eventually evolved into what sales assembly is today.
And it's super powerful. If you think, like, we're spending a lot of time with the founders or smaller companies that are growing that 1 to 5 mil. They're just about to springboard, and go to market is generally one of the largest challenges they have. And it's like getting that discipline right early is super important. It's something we learned as we were building a company, but having the understanding of how to build your sales team right the first time, how to hire people, should you have playbooks and what should they look like? All of that sort of, really good information that people generally stumble into later on in that journey, I think is super powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there is, of course, we're perfectly biased, but we like to think that there is a big power in just that level of community, right? Having what can, evolve into be just seemingly a never ending roster of other leaders, other peers, even if you're an individual contributor, right? Having the opportunity to connect with people that are doing your exact same job, but just at other B2B technology companies that, let's be honest, the mechanics of what it takes to build an effective go-to-market team, to your point
Yeah.
a moment ago, different products being sold to different people, fundamentals are still pretty much the same. Right. So as long as you're talking to people that understand the journey, that speak the language, so to speak, that there is a whole lot of power that could come from that I think a lot of people it's kind of, placed by the wayside, unfortunately.
And our
Yeah.
story is relatively similar, except I finished school and started with the big phone book and the 500 calls per day thing and realized that I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
Pivoted out.
Wise man. Matt, want to take you back to the early stage founder mindset, right? So if I'm a founder assembling my first sales team, we all understand how difficult that can be. Any advice or tips having worked with so many different organizations?
Yeah. Advice or tips for folks that are building a team in an early stage environment. This is going to sound like, like a no brainer, kind of like people know this intuitively. You got to make sure that it all starts with finding the right people. And, a mistake that we see a lot of founders make when they start making their first hires on the go-to-market team is they think that working at big logos or established organizations like Salesforce is going to automatically translate to success. Right. And, especially at the leadership level, like, hey, oh my God, we're going to be able to get somebody that has Salesforce or LinkedIn experience. He or she is a leader over there. They're going to be able to bring all the structure over to this organization that desperately needs that type of structure. When in fact, what ends up happening is, number one, the sales leader shows up and, the first question I ask, like, hey, why am I using a PC and not a Mac? Right. And, hey, where's marketing? And, what do you mean I have to, make my own dials? I mean, some of that, of course, could be handled with proper expectation setting, but I think that a lot of founders really underestimate the difficulty of really transitioning from a founder-led sale into a true actual go-to-market motion. And they think, especially in our ecosystem, in the tech ecosystem, these are engineers, industry domain experts. These are people that can sell their product because they built it. Right. And they think like, hey, I'll just bring someone on board and I'll teach them to do what I do. Right. And that doesn't, they really underestimate how much of their relative sales success so far relies on the knowledge, the industry domain expertise, and the passion that comes out from a CEO founder selling his or her product directly.
You touched on a really good point there, right? Like founders go create something because they're trying to solve a problem and they inherit obviously all the challenges that come with it. So the question I'm about to ask is that who should be writing the sales playbook? Should it be the founder or should it be their first top sales hire that they bring in the business? Who is better suited to do that?
Yeah, I think the latter, the sales hire. Reason being is because they're going to be able to take, provided of course, you bring on board the right sales leader that's right fit for the business. He or she is going to be able to take an unemotional, dispassionate view of what needs to be done. Right. And again, I think that a lot of what inhibits the smooth transition from a founder-led sale into a true, sales-led motion, a true go-to-market machine that you're looking to build, again, is all tied to the founder, him or herself. Right. So being able to remove that emotion and really just looking at the mechanics, the metrics, right, of what is going to make for a productive sales organization, not just this quarter and next quarter, but over the long term, something that is sustainable more often than not, at least what we've noticed, founders, especially first time founders that are selling their product for the first time, I mean, they don't really know where to begin. Their thought is, well, I did this and it worked. So let's just build a go-to-market motion around what I've done, when you're starting from the exact wrong position if you're looking to build something sustainable.
So let's dig a bit deeper there. Then how do you define a sales playbook? What are the critical elements of a good sales playbook?
Yeah, critical elements. I mean, it would, in a perfect world, and understanding that, it's not a perfect world sometimes, but in a perfect world, you'd start, of course, with the sales process that you want to adhere to. And, maybe even going a step further and talking about the methodology, right? What type of sales methodology do you want your company to subscribe to? Is it Challenger? Is it something else? And then from there, when you deal with the methodology at the very highest level, it's like, okay, well, let's talk about, the fundamentals of the sales process, the very definition of what is a qualified lead versus non-qualified lead. What are the triggers that give us as a sales team the permission to move this opportunity from one stage to the next? How are we communicating with this prospect? It all funnels down all the way into, again, if you want to get really deep and really granular, what does the language look like when you're communicating with a prospect for the first time? And what about the second touch and the third touch? And when do you send collateral? What type of collateral does that look like? So I think that's where, and admittedly, we here at Sales Assembly, we're not immune to this. Early stage companies, small companies that are trying to grow really quickly. It is the old cliche of trying to build the plane while it's in flight. A lot of organizations, they do that with their sales playbook as well. And that's where they run into a whole lot of issues.
And I guess that's something that we talk to a lot of people about. It's like, if you can get the fundamentals right early, like get your playbook right and do it the way you mentioned, building it from the ground up so you can tie your metrics to it. So, hey, I can forecast properly because these are the rules that we've got in our playbook, which allows you to move to stages. So then if I'm forecasting, well, you must have done these things for it to be in this stage. It allows you the ability to, like you said, build a machine, which you can scale. And if you don't have a machine, you can't scale because you're consistently going to be tripping over your own feet.
Yeah. And there's, another struggle that we see people run into that's an extension of that is, especially in an earlier stage environment, a whole lot of guesswork, right? Because again, you're using the past as prologue, and that isn't always necessarily what's going to come true, right? The past isn't always going to inform an accurate representation of the present or the future, right? So, and again, going back to the handoff between founder-led sale to an actual go-to-market motion, when you're making what you believe to be probably are educated guesses as far as what's going to work and what's not. It doesn't work, right? And let's say that doesn't work for 2 quarters straight. It's like, oh my God, well, now we got to change things. But what do we change, right? If we're not giving things enough time to actually play out to determine, are these anecdotes or are they data, right? As far as what's working or what's not working. And we see companies pivot so often that they end up just spinning in circles, basically.
I always say similar. They're pivoting, but with no data to pivot from, right? So you're effectively just throwing darts at a board and going, well, it used to work. So if I throw enough darts, one of them is going to stick, and then that's our new model, and that's what we're going to do.
Yep.
So let's now talk about the next phase of growth, man. I'm a founder who's figured it out. I've got really good advice and I've got a really good sales leader. I've formed a good sales team. They're selling well. Now to the next stage where I see a lot of them struggle. And I've personally been there and done that, is the onboarding piece. It works well for team A, but as you start to bring in team B and C, not in the sense of players ranking, but the second or the third team, carbon copy of a carbon copy of a carbon copy doesn't go very well. And the scaling mistakes that we often see is all around the onboarding piece. What advice and tips, Matt, can you give to those to ensure that they don't fall into the same trap?
Yeah, I think the thing that pops to mind there is, weird as the analogy might sound, it all ties back to consistency, right? And you think about it, when the way that you raise, let's say, your first child versus your fourth child, right? First child, like, oh my God, super protective and alcohol wipes on everything. By the time you get to your fourth kid, it's like, they like, sure that they're driving at 7 years old, and, that they'll be fine if they get a new car accident, no big deal. there's just like a laddering down of how much attention you're really paying and the consistency of your actions as far as like training and developing, right? The analogy that I was going to mention, something that always stuck out at me because this does tie into overall company culture, not just for the folks on the go-to-market team, but the folks on the team in general, is there needs to be consistency on alignment towards a mission, right? And, from there, funneling down from the mission, it's like, great, here are the inputs that we need to provide from a training and development perspective in order to make sure that we're going to be able to accomplish this mission. And the example that I've been talking about for 10 minutes now that I haven't brought up yet is, heard a story about Southwest Airlines. They are renowned, at least internally, to have an amazing culture. And,
Mm,
from what I understand, if you walk into their corporate office anywhere and you talk to someone who takes out the garbage or, head of marketing or whatever the case may be, anybody in between, you ask them, what does Southwest Airlines do? Answer is always going to be the same. We give people the freedom to fly, right? It's always going to be those exact words, right? And when you reverse engineer that, again, ties back to the consistency of the training, the messaging, the development. That's something that tends to be lacking when, Ricky, to your point, people bring on not the tier B or the tier C, but the second round and third round of hires. The overall organization just seems to care a little bit
mm,
less about the importance of developing those hires than they did, their firstborn children.
mm. Man, I know you gave example of Southwest Airlines, but I've heard nothing but wonderful things about your organization. And I think you mentioned about the values, the vision and missions, and making sure that everyone's rowing in the same direction. So how do you instill those values in an organization that it continues to just kind of carry on no matter which team you're bringing on and how many years later? So how do you ensure that stays consistent throughout?
We're by no means perfect at this. We as a company admittedly have a lot of area of opportunity for improvement. What we try to do, especially when we're talking about the mission and the values, is we try to, again, keep it visible, keep it in front of people as often as possible. And what I mean by that tactically is, we, like a lot of other organizations, have, Slack channels. So you have Slack, you have Teams, and you have different channels for different teams and subjects, whatever. We have a channel that is dedicated just towards highlighting individuals on the team that, have done something throughout the day, throughout the week that aligns with one of our 5 core values here at Sales Assembly. Doesn't necessarily tie to revenue, doesn't necessarily tie to any sort of metric, but if one of our values is, we live a growth mindset. Like, hey, I want to give a shout out to Kara on our team because she really took ownership about learning about XYZ that she didn't have to do, right? But just again, living that value of just wanting to grow and improve both personally and professionally. And then another thing that we do is during every single monthly all hands meeting, we make sure to budget the last 20 or 30 minutes of every single meeting where we just go one at a time, highlighting another individual on the team that over the past month we believe has exemplified the values that Sales Assembly as an organization has. So again, it's just using that as a way, a North Star, so to speak. And again, really just making sure that we're keeping it in front of people. It's like a lot of other things in life, especially in a small early stage company where things are moving really fast. It's easy to forget, something that is squishy and non-quantifiable as values. So keeping it front and center, I think works wonders.
Yeah. So very important. So just take a twist on that then. A lot of things go well and we all make mistakes as part of growth, right? That's what makes us human. Can you share a few kind of face palm moments for you, Matt, where you've gone, geez, I should not have done that. Or I wish I could go back in time.
Yeah, I know for a fact that we're not alone in this, especially right now when we're talking in August
Mm,
of 2023. Facepalm moment for us. So Sales Assembly, we've been around for 6 years. We've been fortunate enough for every year during those 6 years to be growing, 50, 70% year over year. And when you do that for 5, 6 years, it's like, wow, I mean, we have this figured out, right? We got everything dialed in, we're smart, everything's clicking, and it is because of us and all this great work that plays. What we failed to realize, again, a lot of folks that are in the B2B tech sector, man, the rising tide that's been lifting all the boats over the past couple of years, when that tide goes out, look
Mm,
behind you, it's like, man, yeah, actually we weren't as smart as we thought. Right. And like,
mm,
hey, we did have to do better on this, that, and the other thing. So fortunately, again, Sales Assembly is in a position where we're growing this year, which is great. Not growing anywhere near, the rate that A, we're accustomed to, and B,
mm,
that we had planned on doing when we walked into this year, just because, again, it seemed like we had blinders on and really we're looking at our success being totally a byproduct of us and the good decisions that we made, totally ignoring that even as early as 2017, 2018, 2019, when we were just getting started, there were market dynamics, right, that were helping to keep us afloat.
So if today Matt could go back to startup Matt, what would be the one piece of advice you'd give him?
Hire slower, fire quicker.
Yeah.
I've
I've never,
heard
that
that a
right.
lot. Yeah, I've heard that a lot, and I'm gonna disagree ever so slightly with you, man, because
Please,
I
yeah.
think hire fast and fail fast is what I lean towards. But I'm curious to know why hire slow, because telling people have got a lot of options. So if you sit on them for too long, they're gonna bounce.
It's a great point. Yeah, I love the pushback. And I think that's part of the problem because we have in our mind, like, oh my God, well, this person that they seem good. And if we don't make a move right now, they're going to get an offer somewhere else. Right. So it's kind of like the reason why, you walk out of an open house, like, oh my God, if we don't make an offer right now, like someone else
Mm,
is coming and taking, we're emotionally invested in it because we've had 2 to 3 interviews and they put together a really good presentation. Sure. We don't really think that they're perfect, but oh my God, they're going to be good enough and we got to bring them on now so that no one else scoops them. I think that with how critical the quality of people that you bring on in an early stage environment, how critical they are for the long-term success, because they are going to be the foundation for the entire organization that you're going to look to build upon. A woman named Nicole Wiley, she used to be the VP of sales at Spot Hero. She told me that their hiring philosophy, and I think it's brilliant. If it's not a fuck yes, it's a fuck no. Right.
Yeah.
So, unless you are fully convinced of like, oh my, this is the perfect fit, not, hey, yeah, this person, yeah, with a little bit of coaching, they'll probably be like, B plus player and that'll be great in an early stage environment. That would be, one difference that I'd make is just making sure that I stayed away from B and B plus players and only said, no. I mean, we're A players only over here.
And I think if you think about the market tide you were talking about, I think every software company in the world is guilty of what you said, Ricky. If we don't take this person, someone else is going to take them because they were at that point and going, yep, I'll take that. Like we had a no dickhead policy, right? It's the same thing, but we call it no dickheads because it just works for Australians and Kiwis. And I reckon we breached it 50 times in 2 years just because if we don't take this person, that person's going to get taken. They've got 3 offers. We got no choice. And so you compromise on your values effectively, right?
Yeah.
The thing is, once you start compromising on a value, how long before other people compromise on other values inside your organization? Because as leaders, you've done it. And always for good reasons. You're trying to scale, you're trying to grow, you're pushing yourself to succeed and grow. And so you take a slightly less optimal B player, like you said, but like it has ramifications. Like whether you're a small up and coming founder or even slightly larger, the ramifications still exist. So I think it's good advice. If you go back and tell them, the problem I always had is I'd hire slow, but I also fire slow because I like people and always think I can get them over the hump. So I
Yeah,
think that's powerful advice.
Yeah, me too. I'm the easiest person to sell to, right? So you put me in an interview with a salesperson, I'm like, hey, they're going to be great, right? But also, I mean, for folks that have been in your position and founders that are looking to build their team, we can't ignore the amount of external pressure that they're getting from their board, their investors. I remember having a meeting with the founder of a Series B company. And this was around this time last year. So just as the market started, taking a nosedive, he was telling me that at his Q1 board meeting, the investors said their exact words, you're not spending money fast enough, right?
Right.
Q2 board meeting, you need 30 months of runway tomorrow, right? So, but you're not spending fast enough, that mindset. I mean, that was years and years and years of just that type of thinking. And then for it to all turn on a dime, it's tough for founders and, sales leaders like yourself to navigate that.
Yeah. And look, I mean, I was still a CEO at that point in time last year when we went through that journey of, grow faster, spend money to hold on a second, you know, maybe we need more cash. Cash is good. Cash is important. And we were lucky. I've always run businesses to make money. And so we always made money. So the pivot for us at the time wasn't as drastic as others. And obviously we're on the other side of the fence now, being investors rather than direct operators in a company. And it's something we're trying to balance up. It's run your business really well, and then any outcome is available to you. Right. And I think that's, as a founder or a CEO dealing with your board and your investors, that was always my motto. I'm like, yeah, we could go spend all the money. What are we actually going to get out of it? Will we grow faster? Will we be better? If something goes wrong, where do we sit? And, we always took a really balanced approach in still driving growth, and growth is important, but, just not spending money willy-nilly, right? Being careful. If we could, even Ricky and I, if we can stay at a hotel in LA and it's going to be $200 a night and the cat's a little bit further away and it's not as fancy and it's just a normal hotel, but you could stay at one that's $1,000, you stay at the $200 one.
Yeah.
It's $800, and I guess no one cares, but you build that discipline of don't piss money against the wall if you don't need to.
Yeah, just like you said, sacrificing one value and it starts like a domino effect. I mean, yeah, $800, like in the grand scheme of things, for a, growth stage or, venture backed B2B tech company, maybe not a lot of money, but again, it adds up. So that there is like a principal component.
Yeah, exactly.
We touched on how quickly things can change. Revenue is always beaten down as a team sport. Every board meeting, every boardroom that I've ever been part of, right? It's always been like, revenue is a team game. Let's go get it. As soon as the times turn, it's always the sales folks getting the hit. They're the first in the queue. I have a real beef against that, right? Because again, you can't call it a team sport and only then go, you are the only one to blame. What's your view on that, Matt? And what do you see from your point of view? Obviously being such a champion for sales folks.
I would agree, at the end of the day, the buck has to stop with somebody. And, if it is logical for most people, it's like, okay, well, if sales are down, then, the buck obviously has to stop with the sales team and the sales leader. But yeah, that when you get into that type of mindset, you are ignoring, again, the 12, 18, 24 months that led up to that of like, oh my God, it's, everybody shared success when things are going well. But no, I mean, when things are not going so well, like, oh no, it's just this one person, this one team's fault over here. We know that's a frustration among a lot of sales leaders right now because it is the unfortunate reality of the ecosystem. So all I could say is that I agree with you. I know it's pervasive. I don't agree with that sentiment. I think that if it's a team sport on the way up, it has to be a team sport on the way down as well. But at the same time, when you do take a step back and try to look at things dispassionately, it's like, okay, well, if the buck has to stop with somebody, right? Who is the most logical person for the buck to stop with?
And I mean, that's fair. Hopefully in our day, I never was that mean about it, but I've always looked at things from a CEO perspective, right? And a founder perspective, it applies to that person. When things go bad, a good leader is able to lead his team out of that without singling out individual units and blaming them for what it is. But to use your sport analogy, I look at it as if your CEO is the coach and your star player from this perspective of revenue is your sales leader, then generally that's the person you want to sit down and have a talk to and go, come on, you're my star here, right? The game's gone against us. It's not as easy as it was last year when we were the best team in the competition, but I need you to lead from the front. You're our star. And when things get tough, we've seen it, everyone's seen it. It defaults to that blame game. And look, you're not hitting this or you're not doing this. Instead of what it should be for a well-performing team and a group, right? And you should be working together on what can we do, right? Okay, it's harder than it was last year. The market is hard. Everything is tougher. What can we do? What incremental improvements can we do? What is controllable for us that we can do as a team, as a unit, potentially led by sales? Because like I said, that's where the buck is stopping. That allows you to get those steps forward. Because once you start getting those steps forward, you build momentum back. Everything else will sort itself out.
Yeah. And I think that's indicative of the quality CEO. And I'm not just playing to the crowd. And I know there's probably like a therapy session for Ricky who's trying to if you are talking about, the buck stopping somewhere, right? I mean, CEOs that take that level of responsibility and ownership and to your point, Sean, that kind of like, great, let's pull up the flag and, let me carry it and kind of lead the charge. And If it is obviously if sales is involved, like, great, let's make sure that the sales leader, the sales team, he or she, they have the resources and support that they need. I think that when you get into crunch time like that, you really do truly see the types of leaders that some people are and some people are.
Yeah, I've never seen isolation work as a way of driving someone to perform. Like isolating someone in a room and going, "What the hell are you doing? Why isn't this working? What have you done?" I'd never see someone respond to that by going, "Oh hell yeah, I'm going to go hit all my numbers next one. I'm going to get out there and do it." Like there's nothing wrong with calling people out, having that discussion, but constructiveness is important, right? Being still a part of the team. And I think that's the bit you're talking about, Ricky. Like if it's a team sport on the way up, still a team sport on the way down. It doesn't mean someone's not going to lead the team out of the mess that it may find itself in, but you're still a team and you still got to remain that way. And I think that's probably, right now and next year too is my guess, like there's going to be a lot of these situations occurring for a lot of people because it's not going to be as easy as it was in 17, 18, 19. I think, COVID had its own mix of fun to deal with when that happened too.
Let's switch it up a little bit, Matt. So growing up in a corporate environment, I was an engineer and I always saw the sales people who had like gift the gab. Like they could talk to anybody. There were sayings like this person can sell it to an Eskimo. It was all about extroverts, right? I would never have known until I started picking up some of your LinkedIn posts. You go on to say that you're an introvert, but I'd love to kind of pick your brains on have you not only managed to kind of get through and navigate your journey, but excel with that personality type in what is traditionally known as very extroverted type of space.
Yeah, thanks for the question. It's the nuance there is introversion. Me being an introvert, would I be happier just like chilling here at home, not going outside all day and, it's like sitting on my couch and not talking to anybody? 100%. Doesn't mean that I can. Yeah. Yeah. I was going to say perfect. A fellow traveler. Doesn't mean that I can't do it though. And I think that's, it's less about ability and more about, I was going to say motivation, but it might be impact, right? Like some people, they will go to conferences, they'll go to events, they'll go to happy hours, and they will have great conversations. They'll, shake hands, kiss babies, they'll have fun. And then they'll leave and they'll be like on a high, like, oh my God, let's do more, let's do more. Me, I'll go to an event, a happy hour, I'll have great conversations, I'll have lots of fun. I'll leave, I'll be like, fuck, I'm exhausted. Like I don't ever want to do that again. So yeah, I think that's probably the nuance, at least for, the Matt Green variety of introversion. And as you could imagine, just talking to people all day long from 8:30 in the morning to 4:30, 5 o'clock at night, especially in half hour increments, right? It does become taxing every now and again.
Matt, want to circle back to sales assembly. You mentioned that you're in this transition mode at the moment. So what are you most excited about? What's the next phase for sales assembly look like?
Yeah, what I'm most excited about is, so sales assembly, not to get too deep into the weeds, but for the past few years, where we've had a lot of success is by training for job titles, right? So companies, we work with hundreds of companies right now, and they come to us to train their AEs, their BDRs, their CSMs, their frontline sales managers. The shift, subtle as it may sound, but to us, it's a big deal that we're making right now, is rather than training for job titles, we're training for skills, right? Things like storytelling, things like negotiation, these are skills that are applicable whether you're in sales or post sales, individual contributor or leader. So for us, again, it might sound like a small thing externally, but for us, it's a really big deal just making a shift into the thoughtfulness and the intentionality behind how we design our learning curriculum and how we deliver that to the companies that we work with. And we're extremely confident it's going to make us as an organization much more impactful than we have been over the past few years.
Awesome, man. Looking forward to it. Sounds great.
I say from my end, mate, just once we started rolling out training and like thoughtful training, like what you guys are providing, it made a big difference. Like I've learned, I think, dramatically over the last 6 years, especially working with Ricky, how much, like I'm one of those people, I guess I started in sales, and for me, it was always someone who can speak really well, got a gift of gab, I can talk to anyone, even though I'm more introverted than extroverted. So that makes you a salesperson, right? And that's your skill set and you can do it, and learning the amount working with talented salespeople, Ricky, the people I worked with in the previous job, how much goes into it, how much skills you actually need to have to do it. It's not a simple thing to do. Right. And so having training and community and things that you guys are building is super important and super powerful. And I don't know if people realize just how important what you guys are doing is for people in the sales career.
Thank you. Yeah. I appreciate you saying that. I realize it, but yeah, I mean, we obviously think that we're the best things in sliced bread as well.
Yeah. And we will let you off the hook. But before that, we've got quick fire round questions. Should be easy. So here goes nothing. Favorite sports team?
Chicago Bulls.
Bulls. Any particular era?
Yeah, that's easy. I mean, the Jordan Pippen era. I mean, it's a cliche, but that's an easy answer.
Man, Scotty's gonna love it. You actually mention them. No one ever brings them up.
Yeah, they're gonna be a joint family shortly, so it'll be fun.
Oh yeah, I've heard that too. Favorite music genre?
Rock, I would say.
Yeah. Any particular band?
No, I'm dating myself. Linkin Park. Yeah, even to this day, I still listen to a lot of Linkin Park.
Like that. Good choice.
Yeah. Favorite drink on a Friday evening or Sunday or at an event? What are you going for?
Yeah, a couple fingers of bourbon, High West. Yeah, neat, no ice. Yeah, that's
Nice.
my yeah.
Got locked in there for next time. Yeah. Favorite place to visit? I know you'll have to travel with your family. So what's the best place that you've ever been to?
More of a general location, the Middle East. We've been doing a few places in the Middle East. We love that part of the world. Great food, even better people. Yeah, so Middle East would be my answer.
Awesome. And here's the big one, man. Doesn't make it, man. Yeah. Peanut butter. How do you like it?
Smooth. Yeah.
You're a smooth guy. Yeah. He's smooth. I knew he would. I could pick him. He's a smooth guy.
We went all the way out with Linkin Park and then all the way back down.
Like, nobody's perfect. What?
No, true. But it's good. You always need someone to work on, right? So,
yeah, exactly. Always room for improvement over here. And I realize that.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you once again.